Hi, I'm Max Keiser. This is the Keiser Report. This is day 29 of lockdown. That's right. We've been here in this very location for 29 days. And so far, we've been both, it's a tragedy, but it's also very interesting because so much of what we've said over the past 10 years, and if you go back to shows we've done even before the Keiser Report, if you go back 15 years, so much of what we've been talking about for so long is now coming to the surface. It's happening. And so, Stacy, talk to me a little bit about this.
One of the constants throughout all of our episodes of all of our various programs has been mention of my hair. So just so you know, in case my hair is not perfect as it usually is, this is because we do not have anybody to look at me from behind until the edit situation or anything like that.
I think I have a comment on that.
Go ahead and put the comment, because this is Keiser Report. It's your show. You're the man in the photo.
I think if the concern is for hair, I think the top and the pants are going to become louder as a way to distract attention from the hair. I've been observing women for a very, very long time, and that was my observation. I could be wrong.
Now we'll move into the serious side of the program, because we have to cover the fact that we have a global pandemic. Everybody's in lockdown. Max and I have been in lockdown for 29 days. Many people are just in lockdown for the last 2 days or so. So we have many, many weeks apparently ahead to go. And what we have noticed is a theme that we cover all the time on this show is that there is always a banker, always a CEO, or always a corporation ready to plunder whatever even in the good times, but in the bad times especially. So we're seeing this passage of this, $6 trillion. We don't know how many trillions actually. We'll find out later sometime. Remember back in 2008 when we first started recording, it was like, ooh, we want TARP, $700 billion. Now it's just like trillions, and you're like, okay, whatever. Nobody could even make sense of it. Now I want to look back to this tweet somebody sent, which was reminding us of during the 2008 crisis when we had the Oracle on BBC. This is my earliest memory of Max throwing worthless fiat at the black hole of debt.
Yeah, well, never feed a black hole of debt, and this is what the strategy has been now for 15 years. It actually goes all the way back to Alan Greenspan. There is a black hole of debt inside the economy because there's no accountability in the banking sector. Because of all the rules that were gotten rid of during the Clinton administration, then during the Bush administration, and during the Trump administration, all the checks and balances for banking industry types have been removed. So the debt has been growing, and the solution is to kill the black hole of debt, not to feed the black hole of debt. So $6 trillion bailout money is feeding the black hole of debt. That's just more debt. The national debt in America is going to become more than 100% of GDP. It'll be 200% of GDP. It'll be 300% of GDP. And so the dislocation and the mispricing and the economic stress will only continue as long as the solution is to continue to do the same thing that created the problem, and that is to create more debt.
Part of why we are so vulnerable, why you're seeing the global economy have to shut down, is we've financialized the entire global economy, and it's all driven like private equity. And one thing private equity does, as you know from the 80s, is if you have any cash or any pension sitting on your balance sheet, they will swoop down and take that and give it to themselves, load you with debt, and take your assets. So therefore, this is part of our issue we have with our corporations in America, have very little cash on hand, because either you have to go large, like Apple and Warren Buffett, or you've got to have just load up with debt, because if you have cash, they're going to take it from you.
That's the thing about this debt, is when you use a word like financialization, what does that mean? It means that anything that produces an income, like let's say you're in the prison business or in the hospital business, or you're in some utility business, anything that has a predictable income stream, you can go to Wall Street and they'll pay you 10, 20, 30 times the value of that asset that is generating that income in the form of debt. And then you take that debt and you do a few things with it that are all equally bad. One is you buy back your own stock. That's fraudulent, it used to be illegal, and it's stock market manipulation. Two is to make terrible investments, because you're essentially getting free money, so you make malinvestments, and you invest in boondoggles, and you invest in things that don't work. If it's the government, you invest in wars that don't go anywhere but make a lot of people rich. And the list goes on and on.
We have also been warning people that gold is the safe haven. Gold and Bitcoin are the safe havens. Most people think of that and they say, oh, I'm going to make money. I'm a speculator. I want to make more fiat. What we're talking about is like when this system falls apart, when there is no more central bank, when there is no more government as we know it, that is when gold and Bitcoin that don't need those institutions to bequeath it with value. These are outside of this system that is falling apart. And we saw this in the beginning of this week. We saw all those, first a huge move in gold on Monday. It was like $80, which was the biggest dollar move in history. And then the next day, it was like $125, breaking records again. So we're going to see records being broke all the time as the system unwinds. And, of course, we're going to go into that right now with what might have happened, because, of course, nobody knows a lot of these things about this pandemic in terms of the virus, but also the consequences in the financial system, which is so complex. Nobody knows what's happening, but there are some theories about what happened with gold earlier this week. And I want to turn to this tweet from Roy Sabag of goldmoney.com. I've received some important information relating to what's going on in gold markets. Today, some banks failed to deliver physical in the Comex bar EFP. As a result, these banks suffered large losses, which will soon be announced. They've also decided to exit the Comex market. Now there remains a big shortage in physical in the Comex denomination. So rumors are the Comex will announce a force majeure and allow banks to deliver LBMA bars instead. This should be announced imminently. And then, of course, right after that, that CME did announce that you're allowed to accept LBMA bars, which are 300 ounces versus 100 ounce bars at the CME.
Ever since we talked about crash JP Morgan buy silver, the financialized world is over leveraged, and they have made claims against gold and silver more than the existent supply of gold and silver. And the only reason why this doesn't crash already is because they settle all their trading in paper, not in gold and silver. But now, with this new crisis, the new chapter of this is really 2008 crisis, part 2, called 2020. The problem with having too many claims and not enough gold is really hitting the markets in a serious way. People want their gold now because they realize that the fiat money world is collapsing. And then they go to get their gold, and these exchanges, whether Comex or LBMA, are saying, no, we don't have the gold, actually. We lent it out. It's not here. And so that's causing people to, A, want their gold even more than all the countries that have repatriated their gold ever since we told Germany that they don't even have the gold on their own soil. Then they repatriated their gold. Now everyone wants to repatriate. They want their gold back. And so the physical price of gold is now zooming higher. And the paper price soon will become a meaningless price. It's like the black market in a lot of these countries where the dollars are one price and the local currency is another price, like Venezuela. The Venezuelan bolivar is X price, but the black market value of dollars is another price. Same thing with physical gold versus paper gold. What we've been saying should happen for years is happening. The Comex and the LBMA are collapsing, and that's what we need.
Just so you know, EFP means exchange for physical. So people were converting their paper into physical, and the physical was not there. This is part of the supply chain issue as well. We see all over the world that the CME did blame coronavirus, of course. This will be blamed for a lot of things, and it could be true. I mean, the other supply issue, of course, we're seeing, and I've been monitoring this, is looking for toilet paper on Amazon. We ourselves have plenty, but I've been looking just to see, because I was mocking people who are out hoarding, thinking, well, America produces 90% of its toilet paper here. We actually manufacture it. That's something we actually manufacture. It makes sense because we have the US dollar. It's the same thing. However, 11 days now on Amazon, I have not seen a single roll available. So you do wonder, like, wow, like what is going on in our supply chains, and how complex is this system? This complex system, by the way, is being taken down by a very, very simple coronavirus. The flu is way more complicated than this coronavirus. I think it's like 4 strands of RNA. It's so simple. Apparently the code for it fits on one single page. And this simple little tiny virus is taking down our hyper complex, globalized just-in-time system.
Yeah, I think the COVID-19 is written in Perl and the flu is written in C++.
Or the other way around.
Or the other way around.
Some coders will complain.
Yeah, there's going to be all kinds of comments. I just trolled them. That's but this is the fulfillment of my life's work. One of my goals, one of my life goals, is to crash the Comex and the LBMA. That's been a life goal of mine for 30 years. And so so COVID-19 is tragic, but I am achieving some life goals.
So, of course, in all the chaos and panic, we won't get answers to this, but the follow-up question from Roy Sabag on this was the CME PR is out, their propaganda. Two important facts have been withheld. One, which banks were short $16 billion more physical than in CME vaults and required a bailout? And two, how will LBMA metal in London be used to settle delivery in New York during COVID shutdown? Another sad day for so-called free markets.
Right, the GLD, which is the symbol for the exchange-traded gold surrogate that you can participate in gold. It's tricky because you're not a real, you don't have a direct claim on that gold in a duress. The way that the prospectus is written is that you could be settled up with your demand in paper, not actual physical gold. Sprott up in Canada does have an ETF that is backed with actual physical gold. People can check that out.
And gold money, of course, you can buy, is still one of the only places, so I must say we're investors, but there it is where we are able to buy gold. So they still have gold, and regardless of the price discrepancy between physical and paper.
Because Roy's smart. He saw this coming. He's ready to go.
Yeah, of course. We've covered that before. So I guess we head into the next time you see us will be day 32 of lockdown, and my hair may be very different because I might try cutting it or dyeing it or something.
I could wear no pants. That would balance out for the hair. Don't go away. Coming back right after this. Welcome back to the Keiser Report. I'm Max Keiser. Time now to turn to an old friend of mine, Chris Fenton in Los Angeles, California. He's got a book out right now. It's very timely. It's called Feeding the Dragon, Inside the $1 Trillion Dilemma Facing Hollywood, the NBA, and American Business. Chris, welcome to the Keiser Report.
Thanks for having me back. I'm a big fan, and it's nice to reconnect with you after all these years.
Yeah, it's awesome, man. This pandemic is the best thing ever. Anyway, Chris Fenton, on October 4th, 2019, the general manager of the Houston Rockets tweeted support for protesters in Hong Kong. This resulted in billions of dollars in losses for the NBA, which has 500 million fans in China. So tell us about what the NBA story tells us, Chris.
Yeah, well, that was actually a very relevant day for me. I actually was at my kids' soccer game when I saw the tweet come up on my phone. I didn't even know who Daryl Morey was, but I obviously know who the Houston Rockets are and knew their importance in the U.S.-China cultural and commercial exchange, in particular to the sports industry, because Yao Ming, one of the most famous basketball players of all time, and definitely the most famous ever out of China, played for the Houston Rockets. So when I saw that tweet come up, I thought to myself, oh my God, that's going to be very painful for the NBA. What was interesting, though, is I didn't even ponder for a second the ramifications that tweet was going to have here in the United States of America. And it was actually right as I was finishing my book, too. So I had the main mission of the book that I've written and is pretty much in the form it is today was to write about the fog of war of cultural and commercial exchange between the two superpowers and all the different colorful, exciting, dramatic, crazy sort of events that occurred during that exchange, and the importance of that exchange in regards to keeping the two superpowers in communication with each other so that we don't move into some sort of Cold War scenario where we're not talking to each other and we're actually escalating tensions between each of us. So when that tweet came out, I remember thinking, wow, that's going to be a problem for the NBA, but it actually plays really well into the thematics of my book, which is, hey, the NBA has actually been playing this very well. They've really opened that market. Michael Jordan and David Stern, the former commissioner, who passed away recently, and Michael Jordan obviously went there in the early 90s. Really opened the market to American culture and the culture of basketball, which really opened the whole market to the sports industry, which Nike and several others followed into. So I thought, wow, that's sort of an interesting, relevant tidbit to my book. What happened, though, was that it woke up the American populace to the fact that this smart, innovative, strategic way of bringing China into the fabric of the NBA in order to open the market with more vigor was actually seen by the American public as a form of pandering to the Chinese government, and also in a way playing the soft power game, an objective for the Chinese government in a way that was causing American values and American principles and American security to be slightly compromised. So then I had to go back through all of my writing and go, wow, was I doing that too? And when I came away from it, I said, geez, I am complicit in this. I didn't even think about it when we were in that fog of war back in those days. And now it's something that we all need to talk about. It can't be that third rail issue that Joe Tsai, the Brooklyn Nets owner, called it. It has to be discussed, and we need to talk about it seriously in regards to how we want to approach China moving forward.
So to put this into Hollywood scriptwriting terms, you had something at the midpoint on page 50 of the script where the main character is going through their arc and transitions suddenly toward the end of the second act, I think is the way you would write the script on this, Chris Fenton. But, you know, what's interesting is that there's an old saying, history is written by the victors and the losers write the songs. And so my point being that what you're describing is that if this is a new Cold War, and what we're seeing in the pandemic is that China is responsible for a lot of the vital infrastructure and products here in America, like ventilators and things like that, then there is a potential with America's #1 export, Hollywood, to be subjected to the same sort of revisionism that America has been guilty of for many years in rewriting other countries' histories. And so the Hollywood product, I know with films like Top Gun, which is obviously something from the Reagan era, which relaunched really a certain American militarism around the world, is being rewritten, reshot, rescripted to appease or to accommodate this huge Chinese audience. So we talk about soft power. Are you saying that America's #1 projector of soft power, the Hollywood film, is at risk now of losing its ability to shape the global narrative in America's favor, Chris Fenton?
Hollywood does have a lot of power in regards to helping promote Western democracy and the values thereof. But Hollywood also has to be very careful how they approach each individual market in a way that doesn't offend them and actually creates relevancy and puts the wind to their back in the back of the content that they're bringing there so they can monetize it well. The way Hollywood has approached China up until this point, I would argue has been wrong. And I have been a part of that. I am fully complicit, very self-aware, and have self-reflected on this. That said, we do have a real opportunity, both politically and financially, in regards to the Chinese market. Politically, in a way where if we continue a smarter form of what we have been doing in bringing American products and services into that market, we will, by default, slowly diffuse soft power into that market that brings some sort of infiltration of Western democracy into it, whether that's Hollywood movies, Hollywood television shows, entertainment content from books to video games to the educational system, the collegiate educational system here in the United States, to even automobiles. Everything we get in there that's a product or a service helps that initiative. Financially, it's obvious. Everything we get in there into the fastest growing market, I mean, let's set aside the COVID-19 issue right now, but the fastest growing market normally and will be for the next generation is China. So for shareholders, for investors, for management, for everybody working at various companies that provide products and services, if we can continue opening that market, it's very smart financially. So there's a political goal and a financial goal. And both of those are things we can't neglect or ignore, because I know the amount of China hawks out there is multiplying daily right now, especially with the COVID-19 situation. And quite frankly, I've gotten a lot more hawkish too. But we can't let that get us to a point where we decide to completely separate.
Let's talk about censorship, because I believe that's what you're referring to with your mea culpa, talking about there was a slippery slope where you allowed in Hollywood, not you personally, but the Hollywood industry, was allowing for Chinese censorship and revisionism on the product. And these are artistic products. Hollywood films are works of art, and they should be above censorship in that way. But what more and more of the distribution model are on electronic platforms and streaming. So we're talking about Google, we're talking about Apple, we're talking about other high-tech corporations that have been complicit and completely in bed with the Chinese government in censoring Chinese people from having free speech in an almost we would describe as a draconian manner. And that has spilled over into the Hollywood product. How are you going to divorce yourself from Apple and Google and these other big tech companies that are streaming the product? There's a lot of screens in China, I understand that, but the streaming model is really the golden goose, with Disney and others now banking huge on streaming. And that's dictated by the big tech companies, and the big tech companies have established their place in this, and they're okay with censoring, Chris. How are you going to get around that?
It's interesting. I mean, right now, the U.S. streaming, the companies that are big in U.S. streaming really aren't streaming that much over there at the moment. That's all pretty much monopolized by three big companies, whether it's Tencent, Baidu, or Alibaba. So the streaming situation, I mean, even Netflix is not in that market, right? And in fact, I would argue Netflix has said sort of, you know what, why are we even bothering with it? And they've continued to make very sort of push the envelope, non-censored for the China market content, mainly because they've said, you know what, we're not going to get in there. So let's go back to the basics of what we are as a filmmaking friendly environment. The bigger companies that are trying to get in there, the big tech companies that you've talked about, are the ones that are in there that are trying to get more in there. Yeah, we're all complicit in this. And quite frankly, there's no way that we can get a better, more strategic, innovative approach to China unless we all do it together in harmony, or in some sort of collective way to do it. Because quite frankly, the Chinese public does love the products and services that these companies that you're mentioning have and bring to that market. So there will be an underlying pressure for the government to relent in regards to some sort of stronger action by a collective. But going at it one company at a time, or even like the way Congress was trying to get LeBron James to speak up on behalf of Hong Kong protesters or whatever it is, I mean, that's just sacrificial lamb strategy that will take out one or two companies because they did the right thing while everybody else continues doing the same.
So the Best Picture Award at the Academy Awards this year went to a South Korean film, and it was in the South Korean language, and I believe there were subtitles to it, and President Trump reacted quite negatively to that, suggesting that, according to him, America First policy, we shouldn't have anything but an American language film and an American film winning the Best Picture at the Academy Awards. Do you see some reciprocity going forward? So if China released a film in America that portrayed America in a highly negative fashion, was that okay? Or should that be censored, Chris?
I mean, we're a democracy that defends freedom of speech. I don't think we should be, look, just because China's acting in a way that is not appropriate for democracy doesn't mean that we should follow their lead. That just puts us in the same boat as they're in. I would say we should defend the right for any sort of content that we feel is worthy of the filmmaking community and worthy of audiences to see, regardless of subject matter, to be allowed in theaters and screen freely like it always has been, regardless of the policies that China has. The policies that China has, we need to approach collectively. We need to talk about them out loud. They can't be quiet. We can't be secretly, censoring versions of scripts or whatever because we feel like it's going to offend them. We need to bring it out of the open, and we need to do it in unison with other industries and other companies.
All right, Chris Fenton, great script. The third act needs some work, though. Thanks for being on the Keiser Report.
Hey, Max, anytime, and happy to speak about any of this stuff. So thank you so much. And Stacy, great to meet you finally, and really enjoy everything you guys are doing, and thank you.
All right, great. Well, that's going to do it for this edition of the Keiser Report with me, Max Keiser, and Stacy Herbert. I want to thank our guest, Chris Fenton. He's the author of the fascinating must-read Feeding the Dragon. No, it does not star Bruce Lee. If you'd like to get in touch with us, it's Keiser Report on Twitter. Until next time, bye, y'all.